So we interrupt our regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special episode about GameStop stock. So I feel like in light of recent events, it would be irresponsible of me to talk about anything else other than GameStop, and I figure that you guys wouldn't want to hear about anything else anyways. So to summarize, in case you've been living under a rock, shares in the company GameStop have rallied from around $17 per share at the beginning of the year to the time of this recording is trading at $347.51. Which, if you're doing the math at home, that's just about a 20x on the shares. And if you bought call options, you'd probably be up a lot more than 20x. So if you're confused as to what's going on, well, it all started on the Reddit group Wall Street Bets, which this is a phone case, by the way. So if you guys see the Wall Street Bets logo, like I just have like a phone case where I have a sticker of it. Just back there. So yeah, if you guys are wondering, some of you saw the sticker from before, but it all started on that Reddit group called Wall Street Bets, where some investors and traders have noticed that GameStop was one of the most heavily shorted stocks on the entire stock market. The short floats is the amount of shares that are sold short of any given stock. And then the short float for GameStop was over 100%, which means that more the shares were sold of GameStop than there were total shares out there that were floating in the market. So if you don't know what short selling is basically when you bet against the stock. So you bet that a stock will go down in value. So you'll make money if the stock goes down, and you'll lose money if the stock goes up if you're short. So how it works in practice though is that you borrow a share and then you sell it with a promise to pay back the borrowed share later. So if you're right and the stock goes down, well then you can buy back the share at a lower price and then repay whoever you borrowed, and then you can make the difference between what you sold it for and what you bought it back for. So for example, if you shorted a stock at $20 per share and then it falls to 10, well then you win, right? Because you sold the stock at 20 and then you can buy it back at 10 and repay your obligation, and then you just made $10 per share. In practice, there's also borrowing fees for shorting a stock, but we're not going to get into that. That's a little nitty gritty, but you can think of it as when you're buying stocks, you're buying low and selling high, versus when you're shorting stocks, it's like the reverse, right? So you're selling high first, and then you're buying low, or at least that's the idea. However, as GameStop has demonstrated, short selling has its own set of risk, and it can go horribly wrong. This is because when you short a stock, your downside is theoretically unlimited because there's no limit to how far a stock can rise. So if you're long the stock, which means that if you buy a stock and you want it to go up, well then if it goes against you, the worst that could happen is the company goes bankrupt and the shares go to zero. So your downside is capped at 100%. But with shorting a stock, there's no theoretical maximum, like I said, right? So the stock could theoretically rise forever, like it does with GameStop, obviously, right? So you may be forced to buy GameStop back at like 20x of the original price where you shorted it at. Yeah, it can turn ugly real quick. Now with GameStop in particular, because the short float was over 100%, that means that there weren't actually enough shares on the entire market to cover all the short positions that were taken out, that were outstanding, meaning that if everyone just held on to their GameStop shares and refused to sell, the stock would have nowhere to go but up. Because think about what covering a short position entails. So covering actually involves buying back the shares. So you're actually buying the shares when you're closing out a short position. So you got all these like hedge funds who are panicking because the stock price is going up. So they're trying to buy the stock to cover their short position. And then you got more and more retail investors pouring in who are also buying the stock because they want to just jump on the train. Well, then you're going to have a ton of buying pressure and not that many people selling, because the people who are holding are retail investors on Wall Street Bets, and then they're all about the diamond hands, right? So they're not selling. So then you get like no supply, you get a ton of demand, and then the stock just shoots through the roof. So it's all about supply and demand at the end of the day. So that's a kind of a brief explanation as to what's going on. So this is called a short squeeze. And in case you're wondering, this is not the only stock where the short squeeze has happened. So it's also happening with other heavily shorted stocks like Bed Bath & Beyond, for example, ticker symbol BBBY, who also went up 40% today. So there's absolute panic buying out there, and some people are saying that the reason why the broader market is declining while some stocks are skyrocketing, well, is because maybe it has something to do with big institutional investors who are selling out of other positions that they have, other positions that they're long on, so that they can have enough cash to cover their short positions. So granted that Bed Bath & Beyond was less than 100% shorted, so unlike GameStop, the squeeze will probably not nearly be as bad as what we're seeing with GameStop, like GameStop is the king. So by now you're probably wondering what my opinion on this whole situation is, and my answer is I absolutely love what's going on. I find it hilarious. So it's absolutely hilarious to see some of these reactions come out of these CNBC analysts and hedge funds and whatnot. So they're all like terribly confused, and they're all like, some of them are pretty angry too. So you know, with all fairness, in regards to fairness, the accusations of stock manipulation that some people have thrown against Wall Street bets, all these like short seller hedge funds, they've been flexing their power on retail investors for decades, okay? So this is like kind of seeing the kid being bullied for like years and years, finally standing up to the bully, and then the bully falls flat on his face, and it's actually like so nice to see. So these short seller hedge funds, what they would do is that they would publish a report, and they never get in trouble for this, by the way, okay? So they publish a report, a short report, and they would come out saying what essentially is a hit piece on whatever stock it is. And then sometimes it's based in logic, sometimes it isn't. Obviously it's biased because they have like a vested interest in seeing the stock fall. So what they would do is that they would short the stock first, and then they would publish the short report, and then that becomes kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where the stock just falls because they publish the short report. So then, you know, it's they make money off of doing this all the time, right? They just rinse and repeat, and then they make money at the expense of the retail investors. And if that doesn't sound fair to you, well, they get away with it. So, you know, with GameStop, they just got caught because they let their greed run a little too far this time, because they shorted more than 100% of the float. So now there's been like accusations of what's called naked short selling, which is illegal, by the way. Okay, so that's when you sell shares, or when you short shares, sorry, that are not proven to exist in the first place. So you short like imaginary shares, and this is illegal. And it's kind of ridiculous how some people are calling for Wall Street bets to be investigated and banned and whatever. So in my opinion, why don't we investigate these hedge funds for potential naked short selling, right? So I'm not accusing anyone in particular of doing it. I don't have any evidence to prove that there was naked short selling. I'm just wondering how the stock got above 100% short float. So, you know, there's a question for you right there, right? And what I think that we all need to understand at this point is that GameStop stock no longer kind of represent the company. I know that's crazy to say that like a stock doesn't represent the underlying company anymore, but that in this case is true, right? So rather it's just a vessel that kind of conducts the will of the people. At least that's how I think about it, and I absolutely love what it represents. So I keep reading reports that short sellers have closed their short positions on GameStop, meaning that they've bought back the shares and covered their short. But I think that this is somewhat of a conspiracy theory. I think this is somewhat of like just fake news. Because not to get tinfoil hat on you guys, but I have reason to doubt this news actually. So Louis Rosman actually made a video about this. So I'll link his video down below in the description, and I recommend you check it out after you watch this video. But essentially he did some digging, and it doesn't appear that there was enough volume on the stock for GameStop in order to cover all the shares that were short, right? So I'm talking about like big hedge funds like Melvin Capital, who heavily shorted the stock, and it just doesn't appear that the volume supports the fact that, or the idea that they cover their entire position. So we have reason to believe that they're just telling everyone that they cover their short position so that people will stop buying the shares. Because betting against Melvin Capital has been a big rallying cry on Wall Street bets, and part of the reason why GameStop is running up so much, because people are saying, oh, we got to take this to these hedge funds, and Melvin Capital is like public enemy number one, so we got to take it to them, and then just buy the stock and just hold it. So I feel like Melvin Capital, they're kind of panicking right now. So they're just saying, oh, we covered our entire position. There's no need to bet against us anymore. But I think that the facts don't really support their claims. And notice how they never claimed that they covered their entire short position. So they just said that we closed out our short position. Well, if you think about it, what does that mean, right? So they could have made that statement technically true by buying back just one share, right? Like, what if they just bought back one share of GameStop? So they spent like $300, they bought back one share, and they're like, we covered our short position. Well, technically that's true, right? But they never said they covered their entire position, right? So think about that for 1 second. I think that Melvin Capital is actually still short GameStop. But from a fundamental standpoint though, I hate to be the party pooper, but GameStop I feel like it's in a bubble, right? So I don't think that anyone can deny that. And even the most passionate GameStop supporter must admit that the fundamentals of the company do not back up the stock price at this point. And at some point, the stock will most likely come tumbling down. But with that being said though, although I said I personally love what's going on, for that reason, I myself will be sitting out of this rocket ship to the moon on GameStop stock. But with that being said, if you decide to jump in the stock yourself, I'm all for that. Just make sure you know all the risk beforehand, right? Make sure you understand the risk to investing in GameStop at this point, because the stock is it's absolutely crazy. So I did, however, hitch a ride on some other stocks that are popular on Wall Street Bets that I think they're a little less talked about than GameStop, but I think that they're also less risky as a result because they haven't run up nearly as much. So for example, I decided to pick up 350 shares of Nokia at an average cost of $6.50 per share. Now I know I'm down like 10 or 15% already after hours because it did drop quite a bit. But long term, I think that I can definitely see Nokia being justified from a fundamental level to be worth more than $6.50 per share. So if it crashes, then I'm completely fine with holding those shares for the long term. And I actually wanted to make a video about Nokia, but it got delayed for obvious reasons. But I'll eventually probably still make that video at some point. But for now, I'm just too distracted by what's going on. Anyways, if you're holding GameStop, good luck to you, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'll leave the video here. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you like the series. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, links down below in the description as always. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!